Alrighty guys, welcome to my review video here. We're going to go through each and every one of the problems on this packet. Hopefully we're ready for this test. Remember, you finish this up, you get 5% bonus on that test. Yeah. If you end up needing more help than this, come by, see me at lunch, something like it. Maybe ask for an extension if you really need it. Other than that, let's get moving. So it says sketch the graph of each line. Lots and lots of options on this question. I think the easiest, though, is to plug in 0 for x, plug in 0 for y, figure out what that slope is from there, and play connect the dots. So quite literally, I'm going to write x equals 0. Please note, this is called the y-intercept. We've been doing this for a while. That's going to be 3 times 0 plus 2y equals 6. 3 times 0 is nothing, so I can just write 2y equals 6. Divide both sides by 2. Y equals 3. That's the coordinate 0, 3. Do exactly the same thing for my y equals 0, my x-intercept. I don't really feel like showing the work for it. It's pretty straightforward. If I make y equal to 0 here, I can divide both sides by 3, and I'll get x equals 2. And therefore, I got 2, 0. So 0, 3, well, 1, 2, 3, right there. There's my first coordinate. And then 2, 0, that's right here. So from this, I can gather what the slope is because I'm going down 1, 2, 3, and going over 1, 2. So that means I can go down 1, 2, 3, go over 1, 2. And if I repeat this process, I can just go ahead and find all these coordinates on there and play connect the dots. Don't forget to draw your arrows on there. Easy peasy. Please note, if you plug in 0 and not getting a lattice point, that is, you find like a fraction of some kind, you're going to have to plug in a different number. Maybe plug in 1, maybe plug in 2, plug in 3. So plug in a number that will end up giving you a whole number value for your final answer. So let's continue moving on here. Number 2. There are lots of ways to do this question, this number 2. However, I do have a preferred way of doing this problem. So I can't seem to figure out my life here. All right. So my preferred way of doing this question is to use my point slope form. As a reminder, my point slope form, that should be one of the things that's on your cheat sheet, by the way. Y equals m times x minus x1 plus y1. So I'm just going to plug it directly in using our coordinate that we have here and our slope. So that's going to be y equals 7 over 2 times x minus 7 plus negative 6. Now, I have found that students do not like fractions. Wow, lo and behold. Surprise, surprise. So what I can do is on my calculator, if I just type in 7 divided by 2, it will give me the decimal number of it. And I bet you you'll be happier with a decimal instead of a fraction. Now, the decimal is not as useful when you're trying to do this stuff. Like this stuff over here, I want to be able to write my slope as negative 3 over 2. That I am going down 3 units and over 2 units. The fraction is actually easier to do than this negative 1.5, because what does this negative 1.5 even mean? It means that if I go over by 1 to the right, I go down 1.5, which technically, like that right there is that 1.5 point. A little bit harder to think about. But when you're solving equations, the decimal version can often be easier. So you kind of want to get used to switching between the two when appropriate. Anyways, now that I have written it out in decimal version, it's asking me for what is x when y is 1. So I'm going to replace this y with a 1. And I'm going to try to figure out what x is. I'm going to use distributive property, 3.5x minus, use our calculator to do 3.5 times 7. You don't really need to calculate. Oh, that's theta 0.5. Whoops. 3.5 times 7. I don't know what happened there. 24.5 is the correct answer. Don't have to have a calculator, but I don't know. Might be easy enough. Continuing on, add like terms. Negative 24.5 minus 6. That's minus 30.5. Add 30.5 to both sides. That's going to be 31.5 equals 3.5x. And finally, divide both sides by 3.5. If I use my calculator, 31.5 divided by 3.5. You get 9. And that's the answer. Not too bad. Not that terrible. Let's go to the next problem. So here it says, write the standard form of the equation of each line. Oftentimes when you're given the graph, the fastest way to do this question is going to be to use our slope-intercept form. That's our y equals mx plus b. Yet another one of the forms that we need to know. But it wants our answer in standard form. That is ax plus by equals c. So we're going to start here and we're going to end there. So in y equals mx plus b, you need to figure out what the m is. So you're given this value here and this value here. So that means you're going down 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. So that's negative 4 over 1, but we don't even need to write the over 1 part. Kind of a waste of time. And then plus b. B is 1, 2, 3. And it says write standard form. That's just like this. So I just got to add 4x to both sides and I'm done. Easy peasy. Continuing on, write the slope-intercept form of the equation of the line. Anyone who misses this question makes me cry. Don't make me cry over Thanksgiving weekend, please. You're literally just plugging directly into y equals mx plus b. That's the whole problem. That's it. Like just copy the numbers. Okay. Anyways, all right. So write slope-intercept form. Now it's a little bit different. Again, we want to rearrange it into the version they're asking for. So now it's in standard form, and they want us to write it in point-slope form. So slope-intercept. Sorry. To get into slope-intercept, we're going to subtract x on both sides. So I just move that x to the other side by subtracting it on both sides. I'm also going to write a 1 here. The reason why I'm going to write a 1 is clear in the next step because I have to divide every term by negative 2. So if I divide every term by negative 2, I'm going to get positive 1/2 x plus 5. And that's why it's useful to write the 1 because you can remind yourself that it's a 1 over 2, and that's our slope. That is, every time that y goes down 1, x goes up 2. Number 6, same exact concept. We need to write it in mx plus b form. So step 1 here is distributing that negative sign. So you get negative x plus 2. And then subtract 3 on both sides. 3 points. Honestly, 3 points. Number 7, another question where missing it will make me cry. Our point slope form. I'm just going to write it one more time just in case you haven't written it and memorized it already from, 5 minutes ago. Let's do it though. We simply replace negative 3. X minus the negative is a plus, and then plus 5. That is the whole problem. Slope right there. Minus the negative 3 plus the 5. Cannot get easier than this, guys. Moving on to number 8. Write the point slope form. Now this one's a little tougher. The reason why is you got to figure out what the slope of this thing is. So y equals negative x. Well, first I can rewrite it as a negative 1x to remind myself there's a negative 1 in front of the x. And then there's just an invisible plus 0 out here. So y equals negative 1x plus 0. That means our m is negative 1. Our slope is negative 1. That's what parallel means, the same slope. After that, 3 points. Y equals m times x minus x1 right there, plus y1, so minus 2. Not too bad. Number 9. We want the point slope form of the equation. Now we're getting into more points here because actually there's 2 correct answers to this problem, really, or really an infinite number, but 2 that I think are reasonable. First, we need to find what the slope is. We're going to use our formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In that case, it's going to be our y2 is going to be 4. Our y1 is 3. Our x2 is negative 3. Our x1 is 3. And we get 4 minus 1 is 4. 4 minus 3 is 1. My brain went in the incorrect order there. And negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. And then we just have to write the point slope form. We can use either one of these coordinates. I'm using the first one arbitrarily. Y equals 1 over negative 6, x minus 3 plus 3. Done. Whole problem. Boom. Find the slope, find the equation of the line, and then sketch a graph given the 2 coordinates. You can actually do this problem backwards. I think it's easiest to do it backwards, actually. So start at the 1, 3, graphing it. There's our 1. There's our 1, 3. And then negative 2, 5. Right there. And then what's our slope? Well, our slope is 1, 2, 3 to the right, 1, 2 down. So down 2, 1, 2, 3 over. So our slope is going to be, what is that going to be? Negative 2 over 3. Is that so bad? Negative 2 over 3, like this. Negative 2 over 3. Negative 2 over 3. Like this. Well, there's our graph. Again, you could use a ruler if you wanted to. There's our slope, and we want the point slope form. Well, y equals negative 2 over 3 times x minus x1 plus y1. No work required on this problem. You kind of just plug and chug and be done with it. On to the word problems. Okay, so number 11, given the f of x is a linear function, fill in the blanks for this table. Leave answers as a fraction around to 3 decimals as necessary. We're going to go ahead and do the 3 decimals option because I know you guys like those decimals. So step 1, we've got to figure out our slope. M equals, hopefully we're getting used to this formula right now, y2 minus y1. What am I talking about? Well, here's my coordinate I know. Here's a coordinate I know. y2 minus y1. Remember the f of x is y. Over 4 minus negative 3, and I'm going to get 4 divided by 7. That lets us create an equation. Y equals 4 over 7 multiplied by x minus x1, so plus 3, plus 5. And now I just need to plug and chug. The easiest way to do this question, in my opinion, is to make a calculator do all the work for us. So we could plug in 0 here. I mean, I could do all this extra effort. I could do this. Replace this with a 0. Multiply it out. 0 plus 3 is 3. 3 times 4 sevenths is 12 over 7. Add the 5. Add our fractions. Do all of this extra effort. You know, what is this? Plus 35. So we got 47 over 7. Maybe approximate that as a decimal. It's going to be like, I don't know, 6.8 or something like that. Let's see. 47 divided by 7. 6.7. I was close. 6.714. I did ask for 3 decimal places. So I could do all this effort, but the calculator does it for us. Y equals, and we're going to go here and we're going to type in our equation that we're interested in here. 4 over 7, x plus 3 plus 5. So 4 divided by 7. And again, you could use the alpha y equals button. I'm not. Plus 3 plus 5. Once I do that, if I hit graph, graphs it up for me. There's my line. All I got to do now is plug in the number I'm interested in. So if I plug in 0, for instance, I hit trace, and then type in the number 0, I get my answer, 6.714. I could hit trace. And if I plugged in 4, it'll give me 1. Hopefully. Oh, it won't give me 1. That means I made a mistake somewhere. What did I do? Oops, look at this. It's supposed to be a negative 4. Look at that. My calculator even caught an error for me. 1 minus 5 is negative 4. Disastrous, guys. I hope you didn't write down too much of this because that's kind of a disaster. Negative there, negative there. This is all wrong. How did I get the 6.7? Oh, yeah, because this is supposed to be a negative 4. There you go. Put a negative in front of that guy. Oof. Disaster averted, everyone. Disaster averted. Okay. Anyways, let's continue on. So the actual correct answer to this guy here is 23 over 7, which is approximately 3.28, I think. But let's just double check because I can hit the trace button and now type in 0. 3.285, 3.286 rounded correctly. So there's me filling in the bubble correctly. And again, I could just plug in my numbers. If I plugged in 4, now I'll get 1. Good. Plug in 2, and I get 2.143. If you want to use fractions, you're allowed to use fractions, by the way. Now, here's the deal, though. This, by the way, is any other coordinate at all. So I don't know, plug in 5. There you go. I got 5, comma 0 point, what is that number? 428? 429. Okay. But now I got to figure out what y is. So y actually is going to make us do a little bit more work. So we're going to go back to this equation, our original equation here. And we're going to have to plug in 0 for y. So we plug in 0 for y. And again, I have a feeling you guys are going to like decimals better. So let's just go ahead and convert that -4/7 to a decimal first. So -4 divided by 7 is -0.571. But that plus 5 there, I'm going to move it to the other side. Gives me -5. So now solving this equation, there are multiple correct ways to do this. However, I think the easiest way is not to use distributive property, but to instead divide both sides by this -0.571. So in my calculator, there's a way to do this without dropping any negative signs. I'm going to do, or any extra decimals. I'm going to do divided by, and instead of typing in the number, I'm just going to go highlight it and hit enter, and it will copy it there for me. Ooh, nice pretty number, 8.75. And that's x plus 3, and therefore 5.75 is x. Subtracted 3 on both sides. Okay, same thing with this -8. I plug in -8 for y here, so -8 equals -0.571 x plus 3 plus 5. So what am I going to do? I'm going to subtract. I get -13 here divided by that, so another cool trick in the calculator. Highlight this. Replace this 5 with a 1. And now insert a 3 to get my -13 over. That's much faster. 22.75 equals x plus 3. Subtract a 3 over, and I'm going to get 18.75 equals x. Okay. Easy enough. Did I do that right? Subtracting 3? I think I subtracted 3 wrong. That's 19.5. I can do basic math. My brain is leaving me, guys. I apologize. Been a long day. Number 12. Finish up this number 12. Let's continue on. Same exact process as before. Find the slope first. M is 17 minus 5 over 4 minus -2. That's going to be 12 over 6 is 2. Ah, nice and neat. Nice slope this time instead of a hard one. So y equals 2 times x plus 2 plus 5. Again, slope first. Negative of a negative is a positive. Copy the 5. I wouldn't even be surprised if students would rather just distribute this to start. So you can actually distribute this to start, by the way, before you start plugging in anything. It might make you happier to see the slope intercept, might be more used to it. Because I can plug in 0 here, and this gives me 9 right away here. And if I plug in 0 for y instead, it's going to be -9 equals 2x, and therefore -4.5 equals x, and I divide both sides by 2. I can plug in a 2 for x. If I plug in a 2 for x here, why am I plugging in 2? Because that's the 2 right there. And that's going to give me 13. And if I made this a -9, to get to -9 here, we're going to write -9 equals, and again, I'm copying this 2x plus 9, so I got -9 is 2x plus 9, subtract 9, and divide both sides by 2. Oh, I get -9. What a weird one. That's pretty much it, guys. Not really too much to this. Got to write that -9 in there. Let's go on to the last page. We're almost done. Sally had $1.85 in only quarters and nickels. Find all possible combinations that she could have to earn full credit. You must define variables, set up equations, and solve. So let's define our variables. Our variables are quarters and nickels. So I'm going to say Q equals number of quarters. And I'm going to say n equals number of nickels. And my equation now has to be 25 times the quarters plus 5 times the nickels is $1.85. You can make your life a lot easier. This is not a requirement, but you make your life easier if you divide everything by 5. 5q plus, not equals, n equals, and 185 divided by 5 is 37. So starting off, if I had 0 quarters, that is, if I made that a 0, I would have to have 37 nickels. But if I had 1 quarter, well, that's a 1 now. 5 times 1 is 5. Subtract it over, 32. I have 32 nickels. And now I found my slope. As I increase by 1, this decreases by 5. I can just keep on doing this. Increase by 1, decrease by 5. Increase by 1, decrease by 5. You could also use a calculator to do this entire process in case you are lazy and don't want to do all this. So to do this in the calculator, we're going to go ahead and subtract this 5q over. And now I'm going to make that my calculator thing to graph. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to make it negative 5x plus 37. And I'm going to hit second table. And look at this, it gives me 0, 37, 1, 32, 2, 27, 3, 22, 4, 17, and it's just gonna give me the rest of the answers. 5, 12, 6, 7, if you scroll down, 7, 2, and that's the end, because I can't have negative nickels, so we're done. Took a little bit of time to get to those answers, but that's okay. Oh, and don't forget to label what each column is. So this first column was our Q, and this right here was our n here. Okay, number 14, state the formal definition of slope using delta notation. That is to say, delta y equals m times delta x. M is the slope. Then explain the definition in plain English. That is to say, you just have to say the change in y, that's what delta y is the slope multiplied by the change in x. That's all you gotta do. If you wanted to, you could even solve for the slope. That is to say, you could say instead that m is equivalent to delta y over delta x. That is to say, to divide the delta x over here and say the slope is equal to the, you could say like slope is equal to change in y divided by change in x. I don't know. These are just options, things that you can do if you wanted to. Let's finish it up. We got one last problem. A candle is burning a linear rate after 3 hours. The candle is 2 inches tall after 5 hours. The candle is 1.4 inches tall. Define an equation or function that describes the length of the candle as a function of time. Define the variables you use. So I'm going to go ahead and say that we want to have x be my number of hours since candle began burning. And I'll say that y, so that's my 3 by the way, I'll say that y is the height of the candle after x. So height of the candle after x, because x is the number of hours since the candle began burning. So height of the candle after x, the number of hours since the candle began burning. So I don't really need to write all that out. Now I need to create a function for it. So y equals, and we got to figure out our slope. So our slope here is going to be, well, y2, 1.4, minus y1, that's 2, divided by x2, that's 5, minus x1, that's 3. Just type this into your calculator. You get negative 0.6 over 2, which is negative 0.3. And then x minus x1 plus y1. Part B, in plain English, describe how the variable is defined. You've defined in part A, and I forgot the word change here. Change with respect to each other. All I wanted you to say was something very, very simple. As hours since candle started burning increases, the height decreases. Hopefully that's actually like really obvious. As time goes on, the height of the candle goes down. I mean, duh, right? But at the same time, we got to make sure we write this out to make sure we understand what's really going on in the problem. So it says, what is the length of the candle after 7 hours? So after 7 hours, we really just need to plug into our function that we just made up. Negative 0.3 times 7 minus 3 plus 2. Just use your calculator, plug it directly in. You know, don't take too much time for yourself. If you did it correctly, though, you will get 0.8 inches. Or 0.8 inches if you want to. Original length of the candle. That's what happens when x is 0. Got to plug and chug. And if you plug it in correctly, you'll get 2.9 inches. And now, how long did the candle burn? That's going to be setting the height, the y equal to 0, because it'll stop burning once there's no candle left. So solving this equation here, got to subtract 2 on both sides. I think it's easiest to now divide both sides by 0.3. So using our calculator here, we got negative 2 divided by 0.3. Whoops. Negative 6.6 repeating. Oh, positive 6.6 repeating because it's negative 0.3. My bad, guys. And then I got to add 3 to both sides. And once I add 3 to both sides, I will get my final answer. X equals 9.6 repeating hours, which is 9 2/3 hours. So you could even be really, really specific for maybe an extra credit point. You could say something like 9 hours and 40 minutes, which is actually the exact number. How could you figure that out, by the way? Well, you have the 6.6 repeating, right? Which should have been positive 6.6 repeating. So I add 3 to it. Subtract the 9 hours off. There's my 9 hours, but how many minutes is this? Well, that is that many hours. So to get to minutes, I multiply by 60, and that'll give me that 40 minutes. Easy peasy, guys. Have a great Thanksgiving weekend. Enjoy it. Good luck on this test, and have a good one.